Welcome everybody in. This is CFP Talks. I'm David Fuchs, one of your normal co-hosts. Joe Nissom, our lead instructor, the founder of Nissom Tutoring, not with us today. Today we have Sam with us. Sam, welcome to the program. You're a former Nissom Tutoring student. You had just passed the CFP in the November cycle. Congratulations on that. Welcome to the show and happy to have you on.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you just passed it in November of 2022. Just so for people that are listening. So we're gonna go through really two parts to this episode today. We're gonna do the first is gonna be about Sam's CFP journey, and the second is gonna be about how it pertains to his career. So we're gonna go 10 or 15 minutes for the CFP, 10 or 15 minutes for his career. So Sam, just kind of tell it, just for everybody who has a little bit of background, tell everybody a little bit about what you do, what your role is in the industry.
Yeah, for sure. I just graduated college last May from Ohio State. Big game tonight. Go Bucks.
I didn't realize I knew you were from Columbus. I didn't realize you were I know a SHU grad.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'm actually a Penn State grad.
Oh, okay.
As you may have heard from listening to our show. So yeah, I didn't put it together. I obviously knew you were from Columbus, but I didn't realize you actually went to OSU.
Yeah, yeah, but I went to OSU, huge Buckeyes fan.
All right. Well, good
Yep.
luck tonight. And then
Thank
just for
you.
everybody, I know this is coming out in a little bit later in February. Tonight is the national championship. They're playing Notre Dame in down in Atlanta. So good luck. I'm actually rooting for you guys. So
Awesome. Yeah, Big
yeah.
Ten.
Yeah, exactly. Big Ten, exactly. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about kind of where you are in your career. I obviously you're a little early on, but where you
Yeah.
work, what you do, just so they get a sense of like, all right, who is this person that just took the CFP exam? Why did they take it?
Yep. So I work at an RIA here in Columbus, Ohio. It's called GGM Financial. I'm a paraplanner. So I'm not an advisor yet or anything like that. But the firm really valued taking the CFP exam, and they see the value that it brings to their clients. So they recommended me taking it straight out of college, and that's what I did. And I'm glad I took it straight out of college. I had a lot more time to work on it than other people who might have had like families. So I think that was a huge advantage to me, and that's where I'm at currently. So I've been there for 7 months now, and still a paraplanner position right now, and hopefully eventually work my way up to an advisor.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, let's start there because the fact you made a really good point there. So you said, obviously this is a huge undertaking, as you know. It sounds like you had the luxury of you weren't deep in the heart of your career where you were dealing with clients on a daily basis. You probably, I'm guessing, are not responsible for business development or prospecting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like was your journey to take the exam, were you mostly just studying most of the day and that's kind of where you were dedicated, or did you have your full-time job and then this was on top of it?
Yeah, the second part there. I definitely had a full-time position, and this is the second part. But my firm, like I said, they valued it. There was probably about at least an hour a day I got to take, whether that was, during my lunch break or during downtime where I was able to study for the exam. So anywhere from an hour to 2 hours a day, I was, focusing on the CFP, but the other 6, 7 hours, I had a full-time position. They also were great with not putting more on me until I passed my exam. They didn't increase my workload really until December. Definitely felt the difference after I passed the exam. And I appreciate them for that because, it was, nice to worry about one thing and, you know, kind of just focus on working with the other.
So like when you got there and you hear and I want to hear more about how you found them and what the trajectory is there, but we'll save that for the second part of this
Yeah.
episode. When they First of all, do you have your other licenses? Do you have any FINRA licenses, or is this the only one?
Right. No other licenses, but I took the SIE in college.
Okay. All right. No, that it makes sense because I actually work in an RA as well. And I had my FINRA licenses. When I got there, they actually said, we don't hold them. You don't need them here. So, which I thought was awesome. I wish I joined an RA before I took those exams so I didn't have to take them in the first place, but it's all good. So when they said, or how did it come up that you were going to take the CFP? Did you know going in about the exam, or when you got there, was that the first time you were really introduced to it by your directors and your colleagues?
That's a good question. So I first knew I was going to take the exam when I declared my major at Ohio State, because I went in as a marketing student, and then my sophomore year, I kind of I heard about this program, the CFP program that's offered through Ohio State, where it allows you to get the education requirement, fulfill the
Oh,
7 classes,
okay.
um, and
Okay.
I always heard like, specialize, 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 and this would be a huge opportunity for me. So, I reached out to my network and the people that were in the advising world that I knew, and they said, at the very least, take those 7 classes, 'cause that's going to just set you apart from everyone else already. So that's what I did. I did the 7 classes at Ohio State. Um, and at that point on, I kind of knew, eventually I'm going to pass this exam. I'm going to take this and pass it. Whether that was, right after I graduated or, later on, I soon found out from my employer that they wanted me to take it like right after graduation. And that's what I did. And, thankfully I listened because I'm glad it's over with.
No, for sure. I mean, the early, I know advisors that try and do this when they're, knee deep in their career. They may be married, they may have kids already, and just adding this on top of that is just so much.
Yeah.
I did this before I even proposed to my now wife, and I knew, and I feel like deep down she kind of knew this too. She was like, I know he's not going to propose until he's done with the CFP. So like I was like, I just don't want to be dealing with this when I have so much other stuff going on. So
Yeah.
the fact that you did it literally before you even started working almost,
Yeah.
it was in the first couple innings of your career, is awesome, and it's great that they kind of supported that. So you
Yeah.
did the prep work and all the educational components of it while you were in school.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, and so you didn't have to do that. So when you graduated and when you started to take the exam, or when you signed up to take the exam, it was just you were just prepping for the exam.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had the capstone my spring semester. So that was, spring
Okay.
of 24.
And how is that?
But
Was that a law? Was that something you had to hand into your professor? Is that something that got submitted to the board? How does that work when you do it at the school?
yeah, so it's board certified. So I think the school and the CFP board has like an agreement where,
Okay.
we have to, meet these learning objectives. So it's still like a class. You still submit stuff to the professor and you get a grade. I think you have to get above a C in order to pass. Um, but yeah, so
I know what you were about to say, what grades you got.
yeah,
And you were
yeah,
like, all
yeah.
right, let me stay humble a little bit before I tell everyone that I got an A.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
These
I'll
Buckeyes,
let
they're
people
so
assume.
cocky.
Hey, we got to be for tonight. We got to be for tonight.
Yeah, yeah. So you submitted it through the school, and now they basically say, all right, your educational component is done. You could basically take this exam whenever you want. And did you know when you graduated that you had this job lined up, and then that they were also going to have you take the CFP pretty much right away?
Yeah, so I interned there the summer before.
Got it.
I was
Makes sense.
waiting for an offer back. I got the offer back in about February of 24. And then at that point, that's when they kind of started talking about the CFP, like when you're going to take it. And I was really debating, reached out to my program director at OSU, reached out to, multiple people that I knew, and pretty much everyone was saying just take it right away. It's not really what I wanted to hear,
Yeah.
but it's
Well, what would you have
it,
wanted to do? Would you have wanted to work for a couple of years and then take it, or
I think I did, but to be honest, I think that was just me maybe looking for an excuse in some
yeah,
ways. Like I said, I'm definitely glad I took it right away, and I would encourage everyone that was in my position to take it right away. I'm glad with the decision I made.
good.
But yeah, so basically, I signed up for the exam in like March, I think, is when I like fully committed. So I started studying right after I got back from spring break.
So while
And
you were still in school,
Yeah, why
you're
I didn't
you're
even finish
prepping
the
for the exam.
capstone yet, and
Okay.
I was still like starting the review course.
And at that time, so you're starting to study in March or April. do you know you're taking it in November at that point, or were you thinking you were going to take it in July?
I thought of July, and I did end up taking it in July, and it didn't work out for me in July. So I'm a second time passer,
Okay.
and
I am
I ended
too,
up
by the
taking it
way.
in
So
November.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you took it in July, and were you working at that point, or did you not start at the new job yet?
No, I started May. Yeah, I started the new job in May of
Okay.
24. So I was still full time the entire time as well.
Okay. All right. Got it. And that actually, I'm happy you brought that up because a lot of people that come through on this particular podcast are second time passers. And I just mentioned it. I took it in November of 2021, trying to do it on my own, got my ass whipped and did not pass it, and then passed it, 3 months later when I took it in March. But what to you was the biggest difference between when you took it in July and then when ultimately took it in November? Like aside from the fact that you went to Joe, because obviously that's
Yeah.
the main, you know, uh factor, but like what specifically do you think was different from the first time to the second time?
Yeah, so like you said, to state the obvious, it was Joe to me was the difference. But as far as like the little things, flashcards were huge. I overlooked them the first time. You know, I was someone who spent, it wasn't a lack of effort. I spent 300 hours plus studying for that like, July exam, and I still failed. I think I just wasn't really ready, and there was a few things in my study habits that probably needed tweaked. For example, when I was taking it in July, I would say I'm going to spend 10 hours studying Social Security and how that works versus, November, I said, I'm going to spend not a specific amount of time on Social Security, but I'm going to, spend this to master Social Security, basically. Whether it took 2 hours or 10 hours, that's what my goal was. It wasn't the 10
Mhm.
hours that it took. Um, so I was, way more focused the second time on just mastering subjects instead of just focusing on the end goal of, spending 8 hours on something and more or less just going through the motions.
So those flashcards, which I know Joe definitely nailed into your head. And basically what you're saying with what you were just saying about, the hypothetical Social Security topic, it was quality over quantity. You weren't saying I'm going to do 5 hours and then I'm done, no matter how much I learned. It was, I just want to spend quality time. It could be 30 minutes learning it, or it could be 10
Yeah.
hours doing it. I just want to learn this. So like, what did you do the first time that did not follow those, that strategy, and then how did you kind of stick to that the second time, aside from again having a tutor?
What helped me the most, it's kind of weird, but just like the environment I was in studying wise. The first time, I would work, 8 to 5 or whatever. I'd go back to my apartment and study there. But this time I decided I'm just gonna stay at work. I'm just gonna do it all at work. I'd stay anywhere from 3 to 5 hours during like peak weeks studying at work. Put the phone away, and it really just, let me hone in on my environment and lock in basically.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And when you took it that second time, or really even the first time, so you're going through the curriculum in college. Did you think that the exam was going to be as hard as it was? Or when you took it the first time, were you like, holy shit, like that was way more intense than I thought?
Yeah, that's
You're
a
in
good
school
question.
there. You're probably still taking these college exams where you could stay up 2 nights in a row and
Yeah.
cram it and not go to class for 2 months and pass. Like Joe and I always say, like those people get that if you go in with that attitude the first time or whenever you do it, you're gonna get slammed because this is not that type of exam. And you were in the heart of that. Like when I took it,
Yeah.
I was 6, 7 years out of school. So I hadn't really taken an exam in a while. But you were in the heart of like the cramming years of studying. So how is that?
Yeah, no, I mean you brought up a good point there. It's like I said, as far as like the work I put into it, 300 hours plus, I thought that was going to get me there. It didn't, but that what my goal was. I thought I was going to pass with that. And as far as like the actual exam, yeah, like it was night and day of what I thought it was going to be. It was, crazy hard. My mind was just fried after it. Yeah, it was tough, for sure. It was definitely a humbling experience. And, going into the exam, I remember, a week before, I knew there was weak areas, but, I kind of just brushed it off in some ways, like it was a college exam. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I can figure it out. There's gonna be clues in the questions, but not with the CFP. I mean, you got to know your stuff.
Yeah. How is your confidence? And then we'll wrap this part up, and then I want to hear a little bit more about your career and how you think it's going to affect it, your trajectory and everything. But did you know going into the first time you took it that you were not confident and you didn't have a great shot at passing? Or did you go in thinking you were good and then halfway through you're like, oh shit, I'm definitely not passing this?
Um, I think I went in, fairly confident. Like I said, I was really focused on getting to 300 hours. I got to 300 hours. Um,
So you
you know,
thought 300 hours and you was like your divine right to pass.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically, basically. And that's what I was at, and I went into the exam, and it was probably like 10 questions in. I'm like, holy shit, like this is this is next level stuff right now.
That was pretty much me. I remember I was pretty confident going. I'm like, damn. I'm like, oh, by lunchtime, I'm gonna have my CFP. And I got in there and like 20 questions in, I was like, my brain is already hurting. I left midway through, texted my then girlfriend, now wife, and said, yeah, I'm just letting you know there's 0% I'm passing this exam.
Yeah, I,
So
I sorry, not to interrupt, but I did the
yeah,
same
yeah,
thing. I took a phone call halfway through because they say you're allowed to do that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they're like, "So how's it going?" And I was like, "It's not looking good."
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And they were like, no way. I was like, yeah, I'm like, just expect like I'm not passing this exam. But how was it different the second time?
the second time, I still kind of felt the pressure of, you know, what happens if I don't pass? Throughout the exam, I kept thinking to myself, what happens if I don't pass? What happens if I don't pass? And then after the first section, like the four sections you get or whatever, I took a little break after the first section, walked down the hall, tried to clear my mind a little bit. And I was, just really tried to convince myself that like I belong in this room, I belong to pass this CFP. There's no reason why I can't pass this. I put in the work. Um, I've been scoring good. So I just completely switched my mindset in the next, 3 quarters after that. I was really locked in.
Good, good. All right, so we'll wrap up with this. And this is a broad question, so I'm going to try and make it a little bit more where you can come up with an answer quickly, or it'll be a fun question to answer. So for anyone that's taking the exam coming up in March, which is, in a couple of weeks from now, um, what is the number one or two pieces of advice that you would give somebody? And it can be anything. It could be something that you did that you wouldn't do, something that you did that you would suggest they do, something that you didn't do. Like what would your biggest piece of advice be for someone taking the exam coming up here in the March 2025 cycle?
Just really focus on that routine that you built from the beginning. To me, my routine was my, fundamentals. That was the foundation that I built. So just really focus on that. And like I said earlier, hit those flashcards hard because there's probably like 10 or 15 questions on the exam where just came straight from the flashcards.
Awesome. Sam, appreciate it. This is the end of this episode hearing about your CFP journey. Want to hear a little bit about your career and everything. So we'll be back. This is the end of this episode. Thank you. I will see you in just a few minutes for the second part.